Good afternoon, good evening. I guess however you're
Yeah.
going to listen to it.
Right.
We are live once again for Tribe Talk Live, and you're wondering, well, why didn't I see this when it was recorded? Well, with some different technical difficulties, we've finally managed to get Tribe Talk back up and running. It is week 4 of the season, heading into week 5, and obviously the Tribe Talk show has not been on yet, but we are here and we are live once again. And joining me as head football coach of the Clark Indians, that is Duane Matthess. And Coach, thank you once again for joining us on the show. And obviously, it's a great time here to head into district play.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you always willing to, host Tribe Talk, and you do a fantastic job, Damon. So, I know it's always great to, it's the way we keep our alumni involved, obviously you being a former graduate, but, yeah, that was a message to our kids this week. In fact, we're sitting at 2-2, the same record we were last season going into district play, but we can clean the table and clean the slate with our district play. And guess what? We're district champions and we're in the playoffs.
Right.
So, but we can't get to that point without starting off 1-0.
Absolutely, and you mentioned the fact there 1-0 is it's a big 1-0 coming up. You hit the
Mm-hmm.
road for your first 2 district games at that. You got to go to Saydel and then take on that high flying offense of Des Moines Christian. We'll talk about the entire district here as the show goes on, but let's recap a little bit. Let's go back here the first 4 weeks of the season. You guys are the same exact record where you were a year ago in this time, 2-2, coming over a couple of different wins. You got the same Martinsdale win to start off the season, and did so with a great offensive production in week 1.
Yeah, our first game was, was a little different than the previous year because Martinsdale St. Mary's had a week 0 game. So, we always say, in the coaching circles that you make your biggest strides from week 1 to week 2. Well, they had a week 0 game, so their biggest strides were coming in essentially right before they played us. And I had told our players that that Martinsdale team that we're going to face is not the same Martinsdale team that we played last year and we beat 45-0. And it was a back and forth game. We ended up Brian kind of had the hot hand that game and ended up rushing for almost 250 yards. As a team though we rushed for over 400 yards rushing. So anytime that you can, or excuse me, over 500 yards rushing, and we set our new 2 school records for most rushing yards in a game and total offense in a game. And so anytime that you're able to move that ball at ease, rushing the ball, and I thought our guys were a little bit more physical on the offense and defensive lines and kind of wore them down. And that was kind of the difference in the ball game. Our last 2 drives of the game. Were kind of clock eaters, or last drive of this game in the Martinsville game was a clock eater. But it was a back and forth game. And, Martinsville has some athletes. And, I told the guys after the game, this team's going to win some games. And, they're not 0-9 like they were last season.
Right.
And, I think they're sitting at 3-1.
Yeah,
Going into,
I think they're 4-1 going.
Oh yeah, excuse me, 4-1 going into their only losses against us.
Yep.
So they beat. I know they beat Colfax Mingo for one. I can't remember who their other 3 games that they played, but they Coach Wharton over there has done a fantastic job, and who knows how their district play is going to go. I mean, they may be one of those teams that sneaks into the playoffs.
Right. And for the second year in a row, you face a Martinsdale team who did, they gave you a dogfight that first week of the season. This wasn't an easy win by any means. You put up 50 points. People are thinking, yeah, that was a great offensive night, but they put up a fight.
I mean, we won by 15 points. I mean, so. Yeah, we did put up 50, but it was just kind of like that who's going to have the ball last almost feeling, because, there was a point where, we were up and then all of a sudden they answered with 20 straight points, and next thing you know, we're down. And, we're having some things with, onsides going on where we can't keep the ball and, in our possession. And, every time we had the ball, we could score, but it was just keeping the ball and hanging on to it. That was the issue there. And, but eventually, I do think that our team was a little bit more physical for them. And, where they, had their strong suits were their skill players, and we were able to make some adjustments and um, move some people around to get better matchups for us in our favor, and ultimately, we come out with the win. But it was it was touch and go at times.
Yeah, battled through adversity. You guys fought through that and started off the second straight season at 1-0. We take you to week 2 and you hit the road. And for the second straight year, you had to face a brand new coach at Nottoway Valley, this time in Coach Flynn Heald and company there, coming out of the college ranks, bringing this William and Mary style offense that Nottoway Valley did. And boy, it was a dogfight throughout, and then Nottoway Valley kind of took control there early in the third.
Yeah, that's one of those ones you wish you could maybe have back, just in the sense of, we didn't play our best game. Some of that was, making the adjustments to what they were doing. We had some guys, we were missing some guys. That's no excuse. At one point, it was I think a 6-point game, and, we were driving with the ball, and we fumbled the ball twice, I believe. And, shoulda, coulda, woulda kind of deal. I mean, but I think it would have been a different complexity of the ball game if we, because at that point they hadn't stopped us in driving the ball.
Right.
Now we hadn't stopped them either, but I thought, oh, actually we did because we had an interception, and but if we could have went in and scored those 2 possessions where we had those turnovers, I think that changes the complexity of the game and puts a little bit more pressure on them. And sometimes it's kind of like that coffee bean. As when it's under hot water, is it gonna turn into a stone, or is it gonna actually brew into coffee? And I would have liked to see how that would have turned out if we could have switched it around a little bit. But credit goes to Nottoway Valley. They're a much improved team from last year. And I think offensively, they're going to throw the ball around, and there was a couple throws their quarterback made that one, I think Tyler, the newspaper guy, got a great shot of. I mean, I don't know if maybe if Zethan May was 6'7", maybe that would have made a difference, but that was just a perfect throw at the perfect spot, and the receiver made a great catch.
Yeah, a great corner catch. That was going into halftime and gave them that, I believe it was a 4-point lead going into the break. And you come out, you guys got to start with the football, couple of early turnovers in the third, and both of those turnovers turned into points for Nottoway Valley. And you turn, like you said, you turn those around, and all of a sudden it's a whole new game.
Yes, I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, so instead of, 4-point game, we come out, if we don't turn the ball over and score, then we're up. By 3 points,
Yep.
or 4, but the turnovers that led to their points. I mean, it's essentially, 28-point swing kind of deal. I mean,
Yep.
So it's those are the kind of things that are kind of the frustrating part of football. But we need to not have turnovers, and that's kind of been our big crux this season is not necessarily the amount of turnovers, but just turnovers at not great times.
Crucial points in the game. Yeah, absolutely. And you go on to week 3. You're sitting 1-1. You're coming off of a game where you felt that you had it in your hands, and obviously it goes away. You go to week 3, taking on a different look Red Oak team, but you guys are different looking this game as well. A lot of young guys stepped up in that victory.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the game where we had 8 starters out of the game, and so coaches can tell we have our practice plans that we hand out every week, and on our offensive day, or might have been our defensive day emphasis. My little note to the staff was just survive. I mean, that's the way it felt. I mean, in the sense with all these people out. How can we get through this week? And the one saving grace was that Red Oak was a totally different team in the sense of they had their offensive and defensive lines were senior led. Every position was a senior, and so they had some holes to fill, and we were able to take advantage of that. And they also had some injuries.
to put together as a group, and then obviously you guys having to throw new guys in, a lot of young guys who got some valuable experience in that game, who necessarily aren't your normal starters. They got a lot of great time.
Yeah, so you see like people like Colby Feehan, who had some. I mean, he was our defensive player of the week that week,
Hmm.
due to the fact he had some crucial stops at where he was out on an island and made solo tackles that he made. Uh, Austin Blevins, has kind of been a player that has been. He's a JV player, but he also fills on special teams and fills in when guys need breathers and stuff like that. Michael Galvez is another player, but you also have some of these sophomores that are starters um, at the varsity level. Tyler Benning, Spruceton Budenhagen, who are our full Jarris Davis, our full-time starters
Hmm.
that were asked to play some different positions because we had some holes to fill. And, they stepped up tremendously. Jackson Hogue, who's a senior who doesn't normally play defense, was
Hmm.
out there playing defensive line. I mean, and, you know, I think, that was also the week where, Harley Leaps is literally throwing up on the sidelines before the game because he's got the flu.
Right.
Jackson Hogue, I think, is literally in the third quarter throwing up on the sideline because he's just, he's been playing offense and
Right.
defense and out on special teams. And, if someone else went down, which Jacob Jameson ended up hurting his shoulder, so now we're at 9 and we're moving pieces around to the puzzle. And so that's why I said afterwards, I told, Tyler that, my 3 years here, you know, uh, considering the circumstances that we were under, that was a big win for us.
Absolutely.
Probably the biggest win for us.
Absolutely. Total team effort.
Yes,
Total team
absolutely.
effort. Big win. And then obviously last week you took on a state rated Class 1A Mount Air team. Very good team here for homecoming. And, it doesn't get much better than that for homecoming when you're playing in a non-district game, and a team that brings back every starter except for maybe two from
Yeah.
last year's playoff team that went 7-3. They come to town with a perfect record. You guys had to take on the challenge of slowing them down, and obviously Mount Air did what they did.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a really well coached team. I mean, I think that, again, our turnovers, we had 5, doesn't help us at
Right.
that time. And, not saying that the turnovers would have changed the outcome of the game, but I think it would have maybe changed the outcome of the score.
It certainly would have helped
Yeah.
to have them.
Yep. And, I think it would have been nice to see them playing a little bit more pressure-filled game than what they were facing.
Hmm.
Because our kids, it's at some point, it's 20 something to nothing, 30 something to nothing, 40 something to nothing, and they're still trying and they're still fighting, but they know they're facing an uphill battle at that point.
Absolutely. Obviously, it's a big turn of events in that game. You go 2-2 in the non-district. As you look back at non-district play, Coach, what's your biggest takeaway? I guess what things stand out to you about your team heading into districts?
Well, I mean, we've faced some adversity for sure with the amount of players that we've had uh, gone or injured, that we've had to kind of move some pieces around to the puzzle. And we were able to, still come away with a win. And so I think, that was the biggest thing, that guys rallied around each other. We've had to move people in positions. We've shown by far that we can move the ball. We've had 2 games where Chris, the Red Oak game we didn't talk about, but he broke, our individual rushing record
Right.
that stood
Absolutely.
for 69 years.
Hmm.
With Gary Lutz, and I think that um, there's a lot of positives to take away from this preseason of being 2-2. Still a lot of things that we can clean up too, absolutely, and we're doing our best every week to address those.
Absolutely. You mentioned going back to that Red Oak game, Chris Carson breaking that school record in rushing yards. You guys broke a handful of records here in the non-district play already.
We did.
That even some records that you guys set last season.
Yep.
You broke those here this year, and
Yeah.
to just see the progress that this offense is continuing to make, and everybody's got a year of film on it
Yep.
that you guys play. Everybody knows what's coming at them, but somehow you find a way to get 300, 400, 500 yards.
Well, I mean, even the Nottoway Valley game, we rushed for almost 300 yards
Yeah,
rushing.
yeah.
So it wasn't like we weren't moving the ball. I mean, the only one we really struggled to move the ball, and I give credit to Coach Showalter over there at Mount Air, is that Mount Air game. But every other game, we've been able to move the ball, and and I think you're right. Each the teams that we play have a year of film on us now, but we're still able to capitalize on, moving it. And the reason that I think that we are able to do so is our offensive line.
Absolutely.
We have and here's the crazy thing, Damon, about that is we still have a pretty young offensive line.
Yeah, and it's the same thing we talked about last year. Even
Yeah.
a young offensive line then.
Yeah. I mean, our only senior on the offensive line is Jackson Hogue, and
Mhm.
he's doing a fantastic job for us. That'll be, we'll have our hands full trying to, fill that void next year. But our center is a sophomore, Jarris Davis. One of our guards is a sophomore, Spruceton Budenhagen, Budenhagen, excuse me. And then we have Jake Smith, who's a junior, Dalton Stubbe, who is a junior. So, and then when you look at our tight end positions, which are essentially extensions of the offensive line,
Mm-hmm.
you have a senior, Sam Cooley, there, and you have a sophomore, Tyler Benning.
Right.
I mean, so you look at across the board on our line positions. Sam and Jackson are seniors. The rest of them are juniors
Right.
or sophomores.
That's two guys in your front seven that you have to replace. Like those chances a lot better than replacing 5 of 7.
Right, like which Red Oak was in the position of
Right.
doing this last year.
Absolutely. A great start to the year for the offensive line, and it showed. Obviously, gaining recognition around the area with Jackson being the Podium Inc. Player of the Week in
Yep.
week number 1,
Absolutely.
helping that cause out, and then obviously the record-breaking day for Chris Carson that got him KCCI Athlete of the Week for
Yep.
them. So the recognition is there,
Mhm.
and the results are there. It's now putting everything together as one.
Absolutely. I love when our players get that recognition, to bring attention to how hard they're working within our program. Chris Jackson, I believe Chris also got the South Central
Yep.
Player of the Week, from the newspaper as well. So, and I think that's, I always joke with opposing coaches and other coaches when I run into them at the coaching clinics and stuff like that around the area. And I said, we're not running a sexy offense, compared to, what most teams are running nowadays, but it is efficient and it gets the job done.
Absolutely.
And yeah, some people may, think, oh, all they're doing is running the ball up the middle, but they don't understand that we have multiple different holes that we're running, and it just looks like we're always running it up the middle because, we run a double tight, unbalanced line.
Everything's all tight. I mean,
Yeah.
everything is so compact in
Yeah.
between the tight ends that it does look like that.
Yeah, but and that's what it probably would look like to, the average fan sitting in the stands. But when you're involved, in the day-to-day grind of what we do in practice, you see, we have 4 different holes, weak side, power side, all these things, and then you throw in the mesh, of our spin and everything else that we do, and there's a reason why we have backs that are faking and not carrying the ball that are getting tackled.
Certainly so. It's obviously been a I guess an adverse year. It's been a roller coaster so far, you could say,
Right.
but nonetheless a great 2-2 going into district play, and you get to start off district play with a great opportunity to get on the winning side here with Des Moines Christian the following week, with Saydel this week.
Right. And we're looking at Saydel. It's um, they came down here last year for homecoming. I don't know if it's their homecoming, but it would make sense that we would be their homecoming. It's
Mhm.
around that time of year. But just looking overall at our district, Sheraton's lost some games.
Right.
Um, I believe PCM has lost.
Yes, they have lost a
Um,
game as well.
uh,
Everybody, I believe, in district except for Des Moines Christian has a
has
loss.
lost.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so that was my message to the guys is even though we're sitting 2-2, number one, that one of those losses was to uh, a top 10 rated team in the
Right.
state in Class 1A, who had more guys on the sideline than we did. I mean, even though they're a 1A
Yeah,
school.
it's crazy to
Yeah.
think that too.
And then our other loss was, just a couple bad bounces that didn't go our way, kind of deal. But we could have easily be 3-1
Hmm.
going into district play. Um, so our message to the kids was, look, hey, we're still coaching our tails off here, and our district is wide open.
Absolutely. I know. We had the opportunity each week. We get the opportunity to talk for the radio station and the pregame show, and the message seems to be pretty much the same. Is it's still open. Everything
Yeah,
is still out there to achieve, and this week I think signifies that a little bit more.
yeah, and I mean, Saydel is, I know from when I first came here, everyone says, well, it seems like every year we always play Saydel. And it seems like this is the game that it's the winning team. It's their one win of the season kind of
Hmm.
deal, or playing each other was the opportunity to break a losing streak kind of deal.
Hmm.
And my message to the guys is that's no longer us kind of deal. But if we don't respect this team and go in there overconfident and thinking that we're just going to walk all over them, it's going to be a long bus ride home.
Absolutely. We got about 8 minutes left in the show here, Coach. Let's talk about Saydel and dig into the game plan a little bit for the Eagles coming up. Obviously, 2-2 going into district play, first district game of the year. A lot comes down to it. You want to get off to a good start in district play. Here's a great opportunity to do so against Saydel. They're coming off of a tough loss against Interstate 35 last week, who put Mount Air in a tight battle in that
Three
game. So
nothing final seconds of the game.
exactly. So
Yeah.
you're looking at a team that's played some good opponents themselves. When you look at film, what do you see?
Well, they've played some really good teams in the sense of Greene County, Atlantic, um, I-35.
Hmm.
So those schools are not pushover schools.
Right.
I mean, Greene County is I think they have a running back that rushed for over 400 yards or something like that in week 1 or 2, and you know,
Also state rated.
yeah, also state rated. I mean, and they have an offensive lineman who's already committed to Iowa State, and who's probably ranked nationally. I mean, so they have some great players, and I-35. I know Coach Stewart does a fantastic job up there with the Roadrunners, and um, you know, talking to him a little bit. After their game, he says that they have some good players. They're just trying to find. I think they're trying to find an identity and trying to build on some things, and they got some pieces to the puzzle. My big question is, on film, we saw a lot of guys standing around in jerseys that weren't in pads, so it could be a situation where they had some guys ineligible that they're
Hmm.
waiting to get back, and this would be the week that they come back.
Absolutely.
And so they could have a totally different team than what we expect,
Right.
showing up. So it's going to be. I think we're going to have our hands full.
Most definitely so, and within this district, it always is a handful. You play teams like a Des Moines Christian, and they're high flying offense. You play PCM, who likes to ground and pound, and defending state champions. You've got Sheraton, who is the same exact setup in that sense. Saydel brings a whole different look compared to what a lot of teams, and in fact, probably anybody that you guys see, they're more of an option, triple option set.
Yeah, but the one nice thing about playing Saydel right after Mount Air is they are somewhat a little similar in offensive styles. So
Hmm.
they run a little bit more options, more so than Mount Air does. And what I told again our guys is if you don't play assignment football with the option, it's going to be a long night.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to know, okay, who has quarterback, who has dive man, who has pitch man, and if you get a little out of position and go rogue and want to start doing your own thing, you're going to have next thing you have two guys on the dive back, no one on the quarterback, and the quarterback's running for 15, 20, 30 yards.
Yep.
Or, one guy on the dive back, two guys on the or quarterback, and no one on the pitch man. And
Hmm.
next thing you know, he makes that pitch, and the pitch man's running down the sideline for a touchdown.
Right.
So, I really kind of challenged our defense this week. I said, we haven't had an opportunity where we've been able to go out there and assert our dominance, and from the get go. And I'm challenging them. I want to see if they can do it. And we haven't had that performance, and I think it would be a great time to have that performance going into district play, and hopefully they can rise to the challenge, and we can move in. Um, with starting in the district 1-0 and moving on to Des Moines Christian.
Absolutely. Obviously, it's a big week one in district play because you want to get off on that right foot. Last week, with all the homecoming distractions that come along with it and everything that goes about that, what's practice been like this week for you guys? Focused up, ready to go?
Yeah, I mean we've had a good practice. I mean my message after the homecoming game was forget it. I mean when you lose 49-7, it wasn't the outcome that none of us in our from our coaches to our players wanted.
Hmm.
But uh, let it motivate you. Don't let what happened last week carry on to this week, kind of deal. Let's flush it, forget it, move on. And the best way to get a bad taste out of your mouth is go out there and perform really well, and get a W.
Absolutely. We had sent messages after that game and talking about this Saydel game and how kind of it's more or less a defining moment for the season. You don't want to think week 5 being a defining moment, but nonetheless, with the opportunity that comes up for you guys to get this win, what would it mean for this season?
Well, I mean, obviously, to tie our record from last year at three wins would be really, really important. I don't know when the last time we went back-to-back seasons with
Hmm.
with 3 wins. So, I mean, but my thing is, if we get this win, let's not stop there, because then you could, go out there and knock a team off and get your fourth win, and that hasn't happened here in a long time. And heck, let's not stop with 4. Let's get 5.
Right.
I mean, so, but it goes back to what we said earlier: is you can't get 4 and 5 unless you get 3.
Right.
And so, that's our focus here this week is Saydel. We're not already looking at Des Moines Christian, or to be honest with you, I haven't looked at one single play from Des Moines Christian this season. I've my message to the team all year long has been 1-0. Let's start each week 1-0.
Yep.
And we're not talking about Sheraton or Des Moines Christian or PCM or anything like that. We're talking about who's in front of us at that moment.
Absolutely. Saydel being the opponent, do want to take an overall look at the district this year. Obviously, you've got the returning state champions in 2A in PCM. You've got one of the perennial favorites in 2A in Des Moines Christian.
Hmm.
You had the district front runner coming into the season in Sheraton
Yep.
in the district. Obviously, Saydel, yourselves, and then Centerville, who last year had a lot of guys injured, and a lot of
Right.
those guys are back. So
Yeah.
this district, you look at it, and it's more or less a gauntlet.
Well, if you asked me 3 weeks ago, my answer probably would have been a little bit different. I mean, but I really am high on Sheraton. I think they're going to be a really, really hard out to go against, just with the amount of seniors that they have on their team. I think they're close to 19, 20, maybe 21 seniors on their team. And anytime you can have that type of amount of people to work with, it's going to be a tough challenge. But Des Moines Christian certainly is kind of the sexy team to go with. I mean, because of they have a Division 1 athlete on their team, which their quarterback Jackson Waring. Um, you know, I know obviously PCM defending state champions. They Coach Bonnet always has them ready to play, and I know Coach Kovakovic over at Centerville. With their injuries and McCain Odin, who's their running back, who was injured last year, is back, and he's a big kid, physical runner. So the way I see our district shaking out is, I think, if 2 weeks ago I would have said Sheraton's going to be our district champion, Des Moines Christian and PCM are going to fight it out for second place, and then I say, look at us at for third and fourth place between Centerville and ourselves, and I think Saydel's probably at this point still towards the bottom. I mean, but they could easily come out and get their first win against us. I mean, and I hope that's not the case. I mean, but again, I told our kids, if this is their homecoming game, we have an opportunity to do what Mount Air did to us.
Right.
So
great opportunity.
Right.
Great opportunity lies ahead. Obviously, it's a big week number 5 game, Coach. Before we head into that, what's the final message for Tribe Nation?
Well, I think progress is where we're at. I mean, you look at since I've been here at Clark, 3 years ago, when my first year here, I mean, it was a tough road to hoe. I mean, in the sense of there wasn't a lot of bright spots or silver linings. I mean, you try to find them, whatever storyline you can. One of them was that we just didn't quit. We faced a lot of adversity and a lot of tough situations, and we were able to keep grinding and going through them. Last year, obviously, we were able to get 3 wins. This year, our hope was that we could get 5 wins for the first time and finish with a winning record. We aren't a playoff team yet, and I think we have to be realistic. Ultimately, our goal is to be in the postseason and get there. But we were talking today in practice. We always do a quote of the day and a joke of the day kind of thing. That's something that we started, and I'll tell you what my joke of the day was. But my message was, what's the difference between a bacon and egg breakfast? Eggs and bacon for breakfast. Who's more committed? Is it the chicken or the pig?
Huh.
And right away someone's like, well, the pig. And I'm like, why do you say the pig? He's like, because they sacrifice themselves for the meal. And I'm like, that's great. I go, there's a difference between being committed and involved. And the pig is committed because he gives a part of himself for the meal. The eggs, the chicken just lays. He's involved in it. And, I told our kids, I said, we need to find a point where we can have kids more committed to our program and to making Clark football better than just having guys involved. And here's the deal, though. I love the guys that are involved. Okay, and it may be you have a friend that plays and you just the social aspect and you want to do that. That's great. Okay, as long as you're doing what we ask you to do in our program, we still want you out and you can be involved. But the more kids that we get that are committed to what we're trying to do with our program, success just waits at the door for you. I mean, and so that was my message to them this week, and I think that's just going to be my message for the rest of the season is, are you a committed player? Are you an involved player? And and I'm trying to show them how they can be more committed to our program in the sense of being on time to practices, being on time to weights, being a good student in the classroom, those kinds of things. And sometimes kids need a couple more reminders to get that message, and that's okay. That's my job. That's what we're here for as coaches. And hopefully we can just continuing to show them the right path to be on, and we'll get there. I'm really confident. Our future here at Clark is bright. For our football, and and we still got a lot of games to go here yet this season. And I would not be shocked if we get that winning record for the first time in 30 plus years, kind of deal. So
absolutely.
Did you want to hear the joke of the
day?
Yeah,
what is that? I want to hear
Okay,
this.
all right. So
he's laughing before he tells it.
Yeah.
It's not even funny now.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying. So, what do you call 20 Cyclone fans in a basement?
What?
You don't even have a guess?
I'm not even gonna try.
You're not even gonna try?
No.
Oh, it's a wine cellar.
Oh, okay. I
Uh,
see why you wanted to say that now. Okay. Yep. Makes complete
I tell
sense.
you, during Iowa
Well, this
State
will be the
week,
last show that we do.
Iowa State week was always fun for. I mean, because every our joke of the day, it was always an Iowa or excuse me, Iowa State joke, and but it's all in good fun.
Yeah, I bet it is.
And
I bet it is. Well,
at
that,
least we didn't collide.
yeah. Show's not over yet.
True.
Nonetheless, that is going to do it for this week in Tribe Talk. We will be back next week. We'll recap Saydel. Look forward to Des Moines Christian. We'll talk about some different players who have stepped up throughout the year and much more coming up on next week's Tribe Talk. We do want to remind you to watch below and comment below as well. Any questions you have for Coach, we'd like to have answered throughout the week, and we'll get those on the show as well. We thank you for tuning in each and every week. Coach, good luck against Saydel, and thank you for taking some time with us.
Appreciate it, Damon. And as always, one tribe.
That'll do it for Tribe Talk. We'll be back next week.